Chapter 17 of Somme Battle Stories by Alec John Dawson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17. What Every M.O. Knows. The public probably realize now a good deal more than they did before the present Allied offensive north of the Somme as to the terribly far-reaching character of the destruction wrought by the kind of fighting that is waged on the Western Front. The wars of the past have been child's play by comparison with this kind of fighting. One has grown accustomed to finding among the wounded a few men who have been struck down without ever being near the firing line. Transport men, quartermaster sergeants, orderlies in villages behind the lines, and all sorts of people whose work keeps them well in rear of the fighting lines, have seen their share of death and destruction in this war. Even before the present offensive, and in parts of the line which were called quiet, death came flying through the air from time to scatter devastation in all kinds of unexpected places. During the last few months our artillery has been making life extraordinarily difficult for the enemy, even in places situated 2 and 3 hours' march behind his fighting lines. In this work one gathers from all new arrivals from the front, our gunners have established a very marked superiority over the Boche. Wounded airmen have told one that for every shell which has exploded during the past month in villages and rest places behind our front, 50 of our shells have landed with deadly effect among the Hun's lines of communication. The fact remains, however, that even on our side the risks of shot and shell are by no means confined in this war to the combatants. Many of our stretcher-bearers take almost as much risk as the average private of the line, and our medical officers often carry on their labours in circumstances of the most deadly exposure. I was talking with a newly landed R.A.M.C. officer who had carried on his work of tending and dressing wounded men for several hours after being badly mauled himself by shrapnel splinters. His point of view was different, of course, from that of the fighting man, but not less interesting and valuable, one thought. In a war like this, you know, he said, one comes across all sorts of bravery quite outside killing and being killed. Perhaps the public hardly realizes yet what a lot there is in soldiers' lives outside fighting. I sometimes think the actual fighting is among the least severe of the strains placed upon the soldier. The recent fighting has been on such an epic scale, such a huge and devastating business. What's the word I saw in the papers this morning? Grandiose. Yes, that's it. That I suppose it's natural the stay-at-home public should be apt to forget the merely human aspect. But it's there, just the same. Our chaps remain just as human as ever in their rough kindliness one to another, and don't forget, in the different illnesses and disabilities to which humans are subject. Fighting makes plenty of demands for 2 o'clock in the morning courage, of course, but so do other things in this life at the front, I assure you. And whereas the public hears something about the fighting heroism, it knows very little about the other kinds. Oh, well, they are all fighting courage of a kind, of course. What I mean is this: toothache, neuralgia, dyspepsia, colic, stomach cramps, sick headaches, sore throats, whitlows, and homely little things of that sort are not washed out by terrific bombardments and epoch-making advances. Not a bit of it. The world's greatest philosophers have often admitted that neither their philosophy nor anyone else's was proof against a stomachache, or the torments of an exposed nerve and a hollow tooth. Regimental officers will tell you that it takes a pretty full man's share of pluck and endurance, even when one is very fit, to stick it cheerfully in some of the phases of an offensive like this. Well, I'd like the public to bear in mind what is known to every medical officer in the Army, that in every single unit in the front there are officers and men who are sticking it, hour after hour and day after day, with never an interval of rest or comfort or anything to ease them, when, if they were at home, no matter how urgent or important their business, they would be in bed, or at least receiving such ease and comfort, such relief from pain, as medical attention can provide in civil life. I'd like every one who is doing his bit at home, every man and every woman, to remember this. These brave fellows of ours, they don't go sick, you know, during an offensive. It's as much as one can do to get some of them out of the fighting line, even when they are quite badly wounded. And as for the wounds of sickness, sometimes infinitely more exhausting and trying to bear, well, they just set their teeth and say nothing about these. In the last weeks, I assure you, I have been quite glad to see coming my way with wounds, so that I could get them the rest and medical attention they needed, soldiers, from colonels to privates, who to my certain knowledge must have been suffering horribly for days, and in some cases for weeks, without the slightest kind of alleviation of any sort, whilst keeping a stiff upper lip and carrying on with never a spoken word that wasn't cheery in all the din and fury of the front line. Men with acute internal troubles, racking neuralgia, or violently painful things like whitlows, living on biscuits and bully beef in shell-pounded, sun-baked chalk ditches for a week or so on end, half blind for lack of sleep. The very last man I dressed had a slight wound in the left hand. "You might fix this up as soon as you can, will you, Doc?" he said cheerily, to explain why he did not want to wait his turn. "I must get back to my platoon as quick as I can. We've got a little raid on this evening." A moment later he was vomiting. Well, I won't bother you with detail, but his case was perfectly clear. In ordinary life he'd have been in bed, and probably operated on, weeks before. I knew beyond any possibility of doubt the sort of torment he must have been suffering for weeks, and the exact reasons why he looked such a scarecrow. I fixed him. I was his senior in rank, and when he tried to get away, I placed him under arrest. Begad, I did. At the clearing station later on, I found out from his company commander, who was wounded, that though every one could see he was pretty ill, this lieutenant had never said one word about his condition, or allowed any one else to talk about it. He had just gone on with his job day and night. "About the best officer I've got, too," said his company commander. "Couldn't eat himself, but he never missed seeing the last handful of his platoon's rations properly dished out. Oh, he mothered 'em well." To a medical man some of these cases are wonderful. We know precisely what they mean. It's the kind of heroism that doesn't win decorations, but it's the real article all right, I can assure you, and this new army of ours is full of it. I'd like the people at home to understand something about it. It should make it easier for them to stick their bit without bothering too much about missed holidays and things. This medical officer had nothing to say about the quiet heroism of many of his comrades of the R.A.M.C. One has to look elsewhere for appreciations of that very real bravery. End of chapter 17.